In the golden haze of 2015, San Diego shimmered under the relentless California sun, a city where ambition and dreams collided with the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Nathan Collins, a 32-year-old heir to Collins Construction, stood at the helm of his family's legacy, a sprawling enterprise built by his grandfather in the 1950s that had grown into one of the region's most prominent building firms. With his sharp features softened by a perpetual tan and eyes that carried the intensity of a man destined for greatness, Nathan had married Laura 3 years prior in a ceremony that captivated the city's elite. The wedding had unfolded on a cliffside overlooking La Jolla Cove, where 200 guests watched the couple exchange vows against a backdrop of crashing waves and a sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Laura, a brilliant architect with a passion for sustainable design, complemented Nathan perfectly. Her innovative blueprints had already earned accolades for their eco-friendly elegance, and together they envisioned a future that blended their talents into something extraordinary. Their home, a modern glass and timber masterpiece perched on the hills of La Jolla, reflected their shared aspirations. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed panoramic views of the ocean, while the interior glowed with warm wood tones and minimalist decor that spoke of Laura's meticulous taste. Evenings often found them on the terrace, sipping wine as the sea breeze carried the scent of salt and eucalyptus, discussing plans for a custom-built house they dreamed of creating together, a sanctuary with solar panels, rainwater harvesting, and a garden for the children they hoped to have. Nathan ran Collins Construction with a steady hand, overseeing projects that ranged from luxury condos downtown to sprawling estates in Rancho Santa Fe, while Laura worked tirelessly in her studio, sketching designs that pushed the boundaries of green architecture. Their synergy was undeniable, a partnership that thrived on mutual respect and a shared vision of leaving a better world behind. Yet beneath this idyllic surface, subtle currents of disruption had begun to stir. Eric Blake, Nathan's childhood friend and the company's chief financial officer since 2012, had grown increasingly integral to Collins Construction. Eric, with his slicked-back hair and a smile that never quite reached his hazel eyes, had known Nathan since their days at Point Loma High School, where they bonded over baseball games and late-night bonfires on Mission Beach. Now 34, Eric managed the firm's finances with a precision that earned Nathan's trust, though his decisions occasionally raised eyebrows among the board's small discrepancies in budgets that he brushed off as clerical errors. Alongside Eric came his younger sister, Caitlin, a 29-year-old public relations consultant with an effortless charm and a wardrobe of designer dresses that turned heads at every company event. Caitlin had inserted herself into Nathan and Laura's social circle, her laughter ringing through cocktail parties and her presence lingering a little too long at Nathan's side during late-night strategy sessions. The summer of 2015 brought a turning point that neither Nathan nor Laura could have foreseen. On a warm July evening, the couple hosted a dinner at their home for a handful of colleagues and clients, the air thick with the scent of grilled seafood and the hum of lively conversation. Laura, radiant in a flowing white dress that accentuated her sun-kissed shoulders, moved between guests with grace, her auburn hair catching the glow of the setting sun. Nathan watched her with pride, marveling at how she balanced her professional rigor with a warmth that drew people in. Eric and Caitlin attended as well, Eric in a crisp blazer discussing a new downtown project, while Caitlin flitted about, her red lipstick a stark contrast to her pale skin as she complimented Laura's latest designs with an enthusiasm that felt faintly rehearsed. The night ended with the guests departing under a starlit sky, leaving Nathan and Laura to clean up the remnants of the evening, a scattering of wine glasses and half-eaten plates of shrimp. Later that night, as Laura showered upstairs, Nathan sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through emails on her laptop, which she'd left open, a habit born of their mutual trust. What he found stopped him cold. A series of messages, time-stamped over the past 3 months, painted a damning picture, intimate exchanges with a man named Mark, a supposed contractor, detailing secret meetings and suggestive promises. Attached were photos blurry but unmistakable of Laura in a car with a shadowy figure, her face turned toward him in a way that suggested familiarity. The messages had been planted by Eric, a calculated forgery using software he'd acquired discreetly, but to Nathan they were irrefutable proof of betrayal. His hands trembled as he scrolled, the words searing into his mind, each one a dagger to the life they'd built. When Laura emerged from the bathroom, her hair damp and a towel wrapped around her, she found Nathan waiting, his face a mask of fury, the laptop thrust toward her like a weapon. What followed was a storm of accusation and desperation. Nathan, his voice low and shaking with rage, refused to hear her denials, convinced that the evidence before him spoke louder than her pleas. Laura, stunned and unable to explain the messages she'd never seen, felt the ground crumble beneath her as Nathan ordered her out of their home. Barefoot and clad only in a nightgown, she grabbed her purse and keys, tears streaming down her face as she stumbled to her car. Nathan stood on the terrace, watching her taillights disappear down the winding road, his heart hardening with every passing second. By morning, he'd instructed the company's security to bar her from the office and directed Eric to freeze her access to their joint accounts, severing her from their shared life with surgical precision. Alone in her car, parked near the darkened shores of Ocean Beach, Laura clutched her stomach, a faint wave of nausea hinting at the secret she hadn't yet confirmed: she was 6 weeks pregnant with Nathan's child, a truth that would soon become both her burden and her strength. The days following Laura's expulsion from her home in La Jolla stretched into a bleak eternity as she grappled with the wreckage of her life in the summer of 2015. San Diego, once a canvas of promise, now loomed as an unforgiving expanse of sun-bleached streets and indifferent waves. She drove aimlessly at first, her silver sedan weaving through the city's coastal roads, the gas gauge dipping lower with each mile. By nightfall, she parked near Ocean Beach, the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore a faint comfort as she curled up in the back seat, her nightgown still clinging to her skin. The 31-year-old architect, once celebrated for her innovative designs, now faced a reality stripped of security: her bank accounts frozen, her credit cards declined, and her phone silenced by a barrage of unanswered calls to Nathan. Sleep eluded her that first night, her mind racing with the impossibility of the messages Nathan had found. She knew they were false, a cruel fabrication she couldn't yet unravel, but the weight of his rejection crushed her attempts at reason. By morning, hunger and exhaustion drove her to a nearby diner where she used the last $12 in her purse to buy a coffee and a stale muffin, her hands trembling as she counted out the coins. The city buzzed around her, surfers heading to the waves, tourists snapping photos of the pier, but Laura felt invisible, a ghost adrift in a life that no longer belonged to her. She returned to her car, the interior growing stifling under the July sun, and stared at the dashboard, willing a solution to emerge from the chaos. 3 days later, desperation pushed her to confront Nathan at the Collins construction office downtown, a sleek 15-story building of glass and steel overlooking the gas lamp quarter. She parked in the garage, her disheveled appearance drawing stares as she approached the entrance, her bare feet raw from days without shoes. The security guard, a burly man in his 40s named Tom, recognized her from company events but barred her path with a stern shake of his head. He relayed Nathan's orders: no access, no exceptions, and when Laura pleaded to deliver a message about her pregnancy, Tom disappeared inside, returning 10 minutes later with a response that cut deeper than any silence. Nathan, he said, doubted the child was his and wanted nothing to do with her until a paternity test proved otherwise. Defeated, Laura slumped against her car in the parking lot, tears mixing with the sweat on her face as she realized the depth of the wall now between them. Rumors began to spread through San Diego's tight-knit architectural community within a week, whispers orchestrated by Eric Blake that painted Laura as unfaithful and unstable. Colleagues she'd once collaborated with stopped returning her calls, and job applications to local firms met with polite rejections or outright silence. Her professional reputation, built over 8 years of tireless work, crumbled under the weight of lies she couldn't disprove. By the 8th day, her car had become her refuge and prison, parked near the windswept cliffs of Sunset Cliffs where she watched the horizon fade into dusk. A wave of nausea hit her that evening, a sensation she'd dismissed as stress but now recognized as something more. With her last $20, she bought a pregnancy test from a corner store, confirming her suspicion in the flickering light of a gas station bathroom. She was carrying twins, a revelation that both terrified and galvanized her. The turning point came on the 10th day when Laura, weak from hunger and dehydration, sat on a bench near the Ocean Beach pier, her auburn hair tangled and her eyes hollow. Marjorie Holt, a 67-year-old widow who owned a small bookstore called Tide and Tales 2 blocks away, noticed her while locking up for the night. Marjorie, with her silver hair pulled into a loose bun and a face lined with years of quiet resilience, had lost her husband to cancer a decade earlier and carried a keen eye for those in distress. She approached Laura, her steps slow but purposeful, and offered a bottle of water from her bag. Sensing the younger woman's despair, Marjorie invited her to the shop, where the scent of old paper and sea air mingled in the cramped space. Over a cup of tea in the back room, Laura's story spilled out: her marriage, the betrayal, the twins, and Marjorie, without hesitation, offered her the spare room above the store, a modest space once used by her late son. Laura accepted, moving her few belongings, her purse, a jacket, and the pregnancy test box into the room that night. The space was simple, with a twin bed, a wooden dresser, and a window overlooking the alley, but it felt like a lifeline. Marjorie, practical and no-nonsense, gave her a pair of worn sneakers and a stack of second-hand clothes, insisting she rest before figuring out her next step. The next morning, Laura sat at the room's small desk, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror, her resolve hardening. She pawned her wedding ring at a shop on Newport Avenue for $300, a fraction of its worth, and used the money to buy a used laptop from a pawnshop nearby. With it, she began piecing together the fragments of her ordeal, saving screenshots of the fake emails she'd glimpsed and researching ways to trace their origin, determined to reclaim her truth. By late July, Laura's pregnancy had progressed to 8 weeks, her body subtly shifting as the twins grew within her. She spent her days in the bookstore's back room, the laptop humming as she documented every detail. She could recall the dates of the messages, Eric's odd behavior at the dinner party, Caitlin's lingering glances at Nathan. Marjorie, sensing her determination, introduced her to Emily Ross, a 41-year-old architect who ran a nonprofit called Shelter Green, focused on affordable housing for low-income families. Emily, with her short-cropped black hair and a wardrobe of practical jeans and flannel, had heard of Laura's work but not the rumors, and she offered her a part-time job organizing project data for $15 an hour. The office, a cramped space in a strip mall near Chula Vista, buzzed with volunteers and the clatter of keyboards, a far cry from the polished studios Laura once knew, but it was a starday flicker of hope amid the ashes of her former life. By August of 2015, Laura had carved out a tenuous existence in the cramped room above Marjorie's bookstore in Ocean Beach, her days governed by the relentless demands of survival and the twins growing within her. At 31, she balanced her part-time job at Shelter Green with the physical toll of her pregnancy, now 16 weeks along, her body adapting to the weight of Oliver and Sophia as her belly swelled beneath loose-fitting clothes. The nonprofit's office in Chula Vista, a 15-minute drive south in her aging sedan, offered a lifeline. Emily Ross had given her a desk among the volunteers where she organized data on housing projects, her fingers flying across the laptop's worn keys. The work paid $15 an hour, a modest sum that stretched thin across rent to Marjorie, gas, and the prenatal vitamins she bought from a discount pharmacy near the pier. Laura's nights unfolded in the bookstore's back room, where she'd set up a makeshift workspace after Marjorie closed shop at 7. The scent of old books and sea salt seeped through the walls as she hunched over her laptop, her screen casting a pale glow across her tired face. She analyzed Shelter Green's past projects, modest homes with outdated insulation, and began sketching improvements, her engineering mind reigniting with ideas for sustainable designs. Sleep came in fits, interrupted by the twins' restless kicks and the ache of her past, but each morning she rose with a quiet determination, fueled by the ultrasound image taped to the dresser, 2 tiny forms, their heartbeats a promise she clung to. Marjorie, ever practical, left bowls of soup or sandwiches by the stairs, her 67-year-old hands steady as she navigated her own grief to support Laura's fragile new beginning. In November of 2015, the twins arrived earlier than expected, born at 36 weeks in a clinic near Pacific Beach where Emily had secured a discounted rate. Oliver emerged first on the 10th, a 6-pound boy with a soft cry, his blue eyes opening briefly before he settled against Laura's chest. Sophia followed minutes later, 5 pounds and fierce, her tiny lungs announcing her presence with a wail that echoed through the room. Laura, exhausted from 16 hours of labor, held them in the dim light, her body trembling as the nurses cleaned and swaddled them. Marjorie waited in the hall, her coat draped over a chair, her silver hair glinting under the fluorescent bulbs as she paced, a surrogate grandmother stepping into the void left by Laura's shattered family. The twins bore no Collins name. Laura chose Davis, her maiden identity, to shield them from Nathan's rejection until she could rewrite their story. The winter of 2016 tested Laura's resilience as she adjusted to motherhood in the bookstore's upstairs room. She transformed the space with a second-hand crib from a thrift store on Newport Avenue, its chipped white paint a contrast to the colorful blankets Marjorie knitted during quiet afternoons. Feeding 2 infants stretched her resources, thin formula cans stacked precariously on the dresser, supplemented by breastfeeding when her energy allowed. She worked from home when the twins' schedules permitted, emailing spreadsheets to Emily while rocking Sophia with one foot and soothing Oliver with a gentle hand. The room grew cluttered with diaper boxes and tiny clothes, its single window fogging with the damp coastal air, but Laura found solace in the chaos, her children's presence a tether to purpose amid the ruins of her past. By March of 2016, Laura's focus shifted to a project that had lingered in her mind since her days with Nathan, a modular home design that maximized energy efficiency with recycled materials and solar integration. She pitched it to Emily during a rare quiet afternoon at Shelter Green, her sketches spread across a cluttered table, her voice steady despite the fatigue lining her eyes. Emily, at 41, saw the potential immediately. Its scalability could transform the nonprofit's reach and offered her garage workshop for prototyping. Over the next 6 months, Laura spent weekends there, her sedan parked outside as she hammered together frames with volunteers, the twins napping in a portable playpen nearby. In September, she filed a patent for the design, dubbed the Eco-Frame, using a $3,000 grant Emily secured from a San Diego green tech fund, her name listed as Laura Davis to distance it from Collins Construction. Nathan, meanwhile, drifted further from the company he'd once led with pride. By mid-2016, at 33, he leaned heavily on Eric Blake, who'd manipulated Collins Construction's finances since Laura's departure. Eric, now 37, funneled profits into hidden accounts, masking losses with inflated project bids, his slick assurances keeping Nathan oblivious. Caitlin, at 30, had solidified her place in Nathan's life, her engagement ring flashing at company events as she drew him into a world of gala dinners and yacht trips along the coast. Collins Construction shifted toward luxury developments, glass towers in downtown San Diego and sprawling estates in La Jolla, abandoning the sustainable ethos Laura had championed, its innovation stifled under Eric's greed and Nathan's distraction. Laura launched Horizon Homes in January of 2017, registering it under her maiden name with Emily as a silent partner. Emily invested $8,000 from her savings, renting a small office in Encinitas above a yoga studio, its walls bare until Laura pinned up blueprints and project timelines. The space hummed with possibility, its single window overlooking a strip of coastline where surfers dotted the waves. Horizon's first contract came in March, a deal with a community group in National City to build 6 homes using the Eco-Frame, their sloped roofs and reclaimed wood walls completed by July. Laura oversaw every detail, her twins toddling around the office on weekends, Oliver stacking blocks into miniature towers, Sophia climbing chairs with fearless abandon, their laughter a counterpoint to the saws and drills of her new empire. Raising Oliver and Sophia intertwined with Laura's ambitions, their growth a mirror to Horizon's rise. By 2018, at 2 years old, they filled the cottage she'd rented in Cardiff by the sea, a 2-bedroom haven with Apache lawn where they chased butterflies. Laura kept Nathan present through a scrapbook, a photo from their cliffside wedding, a clipping of his first big project, a sketch of their unbuilt dream home. She told them he was a builder like her, smart and strong, her voice softening the edges of his absence, her heart aching as she wove truth with care. Marjorie crafted wooden toys, a boat for Oliver, a bird for Sophia, while Emily brought science kits, their makeshift family shielding the twins from the void Laura fought to fill. Horizon Homes expanded through 2018 and 2019, its reputation spreading along the coast. A contract for 15 homes in Solana Beach in late 2018 marked its first leap, the project's success drawing attention from developers who'd once dismissed Laura. By early 2020, Horizon competed directly with Collins Construction, its Eco-Frame homes undercutting the latter's bloated bids. Nathan noticed the shift in February when a Del Mar client chose Horizon, citing better value and innovation. At 35, he sat in his office, the name Laura Davis on a rival contract stirring a vague unease, but Eric dismissed it as a fluke, steering him back to wedding plans with Caitlin. Laura, at 36, watched from her cottage, her twins asleep as she traced Collins' faltering steps, her empire rising from the ashes of betrayal. In May of 2020, the sun dipped low over the Pacific, painting the cliffs of Del Mar in hues of gold as Nathan Collins prepared to marry Caitlin Blake in a ceremony poised to be the highlight of San Diego's social season. 5 years had elapsed since he'd driven Laura from his life, and at 35, he stood on the cusp of a new beginning, his tailored tuxedo sharp against the backdrop of a sprawling villa overlooking the ocean. The estate, a Mediterranean marvel owned by a Collins Construction board member, thrummed with 200 guests, San Diego's elite in their finest attire, their chatter weaving through the crash of waves below. White orchids lined the garden path, their fragile petals swaying in the breeze, while a string quartet's melody drifted softly, crafting an air of refined elegance. Nathan fidgeted with his cufflinks, his blue eyes sweeping the crowd, oblivious that the date May 15th echoed the night he'd cast Laura out into the shadows. Caitlin had sculpted the wedding with meticulous care, her sway over Nathan solidified since their engagement in late 2019. At 31, she exuded poise in an ivory silk gown that clung to her frame, its train a silent declaration of victory as it swept behind her. She'd spent months perfecting the affair, securing the villa, importing a celebrated chef from Los Angeles, and curating a guest list of the city's most powerful names. Eric Blake, her brother and Nathan's best man, flanked him at the altar, his 37-year-old figure slimmer than 5 years prior, his hazel eyes scanning the scene with barely veiled triumph. Together, they'd nudged Collins Construction into a gilded spiral, diverting millions into secret accounts while Nathan drifted from the company's helm, ensnared by Caitlin's allure and the lure of a clean slate. Laura, now 36, had forged Horizon Homes into a quiet powerhouse over those 5 years, her Cardiff-by-the-Sea cottage a haven for Oliver and Sophia, who'd turned 5 in December. She'd learned of Nathan's wedding months earlier, the date a calculated barb from Eric and Caitlin, confirmed by hush tips from industry allies who'd stayed loyal through her exile. By early 2020, Horizon's contracts had eroded Collins Construction's grip, its eco-friendly designs luring developers from La Jolla to Oceanside. Laura monitored their decline through financial leaks and whispered intel, her nights consumed with evidence of Eric's theft-fabricated invoices, offshore siphons, and padded costs. With Emily Ross's aid, she'd amassed a dossier brimming with proof, biding her time, her resolve honed by the twins' innocent queries about a father they'd never known. The morning of May 15th broke crisp and clear, the sky a vivid blue as Laura readied herself for her return. She donned a tailored gray suit, its crisp lines underscoring her unwavering stance, her auburn hair swept into a tight bun that framed her face with quiet strength. Oliver and Sophia, clad in matching navy outfits, his a buttoned shirt and shorts, hers a simple dress, gripped her hands as she led them to her car, a sleek black SUV parked outside her cottage. The twins, bearing Nathan's blue eyes and Laura's keen curiosity, chattered excitedly, unaware of the weight of their journey. At 10 minutes past 3, as the officiant's words began to flow, the low growl of an engine cut through the quartet's strains, turning every head toward the villa's entrance. Guests squinted against the sun, confusion rippling through them, as the SUV roared up the drive, its tires crunching gravel in a stark intrusion against the day's delicate sheen. Nathan stiffened at the altar, his breath hitching as the vehicle screeched to a halt near the garden's edge, dust swirling in its wake. Caitlin's hold on his arm tightened, her polished nails pressing into his sleeve, her poise unraveling as the driver's door swung open. Laura emerged first, her heels striking the ground with purpose, her presence a shockwave that silenced the crowd. Oliver and Sophia followed, stepping from the back seat, their small hands clasped in hers, their faces mirroring Nathan's in a way that hushed the whispers of the onlookers. She strode toward the ceremony, her pace deliberate, the twins matching her step with a poise shaped by years of her steady hand. Nathan's parents, seated up front, Richard, a stern 62-year-old with graying hair, and Ellen, 59, in pale blue, stood abruptly, their eyes widening at the children, recognition flickering through their stunned gazes. Laura halted 10 feet from the altar, her eyes locking on to Nathan's as the crowd held its breath. She declared the twins his, her voice slicing through the stillness, each syllable a blow to the life he'd constructed. She unveiled Eric and Caitlin's scheme, the staged evidence of her infidelity, the millions pilfered from Collins Construction, the calculated ruin of her existence 5 years ago. The guests gasped, some clutching jewelry, others muttering furiously as Laura exposed the truth she'd painstakingly unearthed. Nathan's face paled, his legs faltering as he stared at Oliver and Sophia, their features a haunting reflection of his own youth. Caitlin's facade cracked, her objections lost in the swelling tumult, while Eric surged forward, barking at security to act, his face twisting with fury and dread. Emily Ross stepped from the SUV moments later, her 42-year-old frame in a plain blazer, a tablet in hand displaying the damning records Laura had compiled. She cautioned Eric that the proof would hit the IRS and FBI by dusk unless he relented, her calm authority piercing his defiance. The security team wavered, their allegiance to Nathan shaken as the revelations took root. Before Eric could regroup, 2 federal agents in dark suits emerged from the crowd's fringes, badges gleaming as they closed in on the altar. Tipped off by Laura's shelter-green allies that morning, they moved to cuff Eric and Caitlin, their restraints snapping shut as the siblings' cries rang out across the villa. Guests dispersed in disarray, some racing to their cars, others lingering to gawk at the unraveling drama, their phones capturing the scene. Nathan stumbled back, his reality crumbling as the agents escorted Eric and Caitlin away, the wedding dissolving into a fog of shock and disgrace. Laura stood resolute, her gray suit a sharp contrast to the fleeing pastel figures, her twins close as she faced Nathan across the wrecked ceremony. Richard and Ellen pushed through the scattering guests, Ellen's hands shaking as she knelt before Oliver and Sophia, tears brimming at the sight of her unseen grandchildren. Laura proposed a private meeting with Nathan, her voice, even despite the uproar, suggesting they discuss the twins and the future of Colin's construction, her words hinting at a strategy she'd kept guarded until now, born from 5 years of anguish and assent. In the fading light of May 15, 2020, Laura stood on the helipad of the Del Mar Villa, her gray suit pristine against the chaos of the interrupted wedding, as Nathan's world unraveled before her eyes. The helicopter's blades slowed to a stop, its hum replaced by the murmurs of departing guests and the distant crash of waves below the cliffs. At 36, she guided Oliver and Sophia, both 5, toward a sleek black SUV Emily had arranged, their small hands warm in hers as they climbed inside, their navy outfits slightly rumpled from the day's upheaval. Nathan, still in his tuxedo, remained rooted near the altar, his 35-year-old frame slumped as the reality of Eric and Caitlin's betrayal and the twins' existence settled over him like a fog. Laura suggested they meet away from the villa's prying eyes, her tone measured, and Nathan nodded numbly, his parents trailing behind as the SUV pulled away, leaving the shattered ceremony in its wake. The drive to Laura's cottage in Cardiff by the Sea took 25 minutes, the coastal road winding past moonlit beaches and quiet towns. She'd bought the 2-bedroom home in late 2019 with Horizon Homes growing profits, its whitewashed walls and wildflower garden a sanctuary for her and the twins. Inside, the living room glowed with soft lamplight, its shelves lined with Oliver's block towers and Sophia's crayon drawings, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of Nathan's old La Jolla mansion. Nathan arrived 10 minutes later, his parents Richard and Ellen in tow, their faces etched with shock and longing as they stepped into the space Laura had built without them. The twins, sensing the tension, lingered near their mother, but Sophia's curiosity drew her forward, her blue eyes Nathan's eyes studying the strangers with unguarded interest. Laura led Nathan to the twins' bedroom, a cozy space split between Oliver's orderly stacks of building books and Sophia's chaotic array of stuffed animals and paper planes. She opened a wooden box labeled Daddy, revealing its contents, a faded photo of their wedding day, a yellowed article about Nathan's first condo project, a napkin sketch of the house they dreamed of. Oliver, quieter than his sister, handed Nathan a block tower he'd built, his small fingers steady as he watched for a reaction, while Sophia pointed to the photo, her ponytail bouncing as she moved. Nathan knelt, his hands trembling as he took the tower, his gaze shifting between the twins' faces and the mementos, the weight of 5 lost years pressing against his chest. Richard and Ellen hovered in the doorway, Ellen's eyes welling as she saw her son's features mirrored in her grandchildren, her hands clasped tightly to steady herself. In the living room, Laura spread documents across the coffee table, financial records, bank statements, and emails she'd gathered over years, each page a testament to Eric's theft and Caitlin's complicity. She explained how Eric had siphoned $15 million from Colin's construction since 2015, forging Nathan's signature on contracts and funneling funds to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Caitlin, she revealed, had orchestrated the fake infidelity evidence, hired actors, doctored photos, planted texts to remove Laura, paving the way for her own ascent as Nathan's wife and eventual co-owner of his assets.